Hello, I'm Alex Weisbrod, and I'll be guiding you through some of the online experiences you may have while pursuing degree completion here at Northeastern. There are three types of online learning one can engage in at CPS. Synchronous learning is very similar to in-person classes, where instructors and students interact simultaneously in real time. Asynchronous learning, which is what I'll be covering in this presentation, does not meet in real time, but does meet online, and a hybrid format would be a combination of those two. So how did asynchronous learning come to be? Well, I'll tell you about it. Asynchronous learning by no means is a new concept, and in fact, here in Boston it has some pretty deep roots. A man named Caleb Phillips advertised a shorthand method in the Boston Gazette where he would mail weekly lessons to his students and they could improve their skills remotely. Then in the UK, a man named Isaac Pittman was interacting back and forth with his students, and this was the first correspondence learning that was taking place worldwide. Then a woman named Anna Elliott Ticknor, who is pictured here, started the first correspondence school in the U.S., and that eventually graduated over 7,000 students during its time open. All of its students learned remotely through correspondence, and they also were all women. So a very progressive school at the time. To think it was about 150 years ago, that is remarkable. Distance learning became a perfect match for the advent of online technology, which really allowed anyone anywhere to access information. And this became paramount in our current climate of the COVID-19 pandemic, in which schools could not meet in person and we had to find alternative ways to learn. One of the main benefits of asynchronous learning is its flexibility. So if a student feels that they learn best at 2 a.m., for instance, this type of course really allows for that type of thing. So alternative learning strategies are really suited for this type of course. Furthermore, people that are full-time parents or work full-time, this type of course really allows for that type of scheduling flexibility as well. Online courses in general are much more affordable than in person, so that over the course of a student career, this really can add up. Another strength of asynchronous learning is its accessibility of course materials. I benefited from that myself this summer when I knew I would be traveling during the latter portion of a term, and I could access the same course information while away as I could when I was at home, and this was actually quite important to be able to achieve my goals for that course. Because the course materials can be accessed from anywhere, this really inherently allows for great collaboration among students. So in the same course section, you can have students from Asia and Africa and Europe and the US much more easily than if they were to meet in person. When a course that's offered for 5 students one fall needs to grow to a course that's offered to 500 students the following fall, online material really lends itself to making those adaptations. In-person classes would have a much tougher time of meeting the needs of 500 students in any regard, and an online setting can much more easily handle that type of volume. Another advantageous piece is that material can be repeatedly accessed and this really can benefit any student who's trying to learn any topic. The more we are subjected to material, it's proven the better we learn that subject. Some of the obvious downsides of asynchronous learning and online learning in general are the lack of personal interaction that we do achieve when we do meet face to face. In meeting face to face, we can see people's affect, how they respond to certain things. We can gauge our responses in a different way as a result. When we don't meet face to face, it's hard to know what others are sensing and how they are internalizing the material being taught. When a course meets routinely at the same time, at the same hour, there are benefits that come with that. A disadvantage to online learning is that a student really needs to be much more self-disciplined in order to perform well. In an asynchronous class, there's also typically a longer wait time for feedback from your professor than there would be in an in-person setting. Enough with the pros and cons. Let's see how to succeed in online learning. Having now taken a few online courses, I have taken both synchronous and asynchronous classes. Some of my tips for success would be as follows. First, be proactive in any course you're taking, but especially when taking something online. A lot of issues can arise that we're not able to predict, such as connectivity, blackouts, etc. If we're proactive in these types of classes and we develop backup ways to communicate, we can really do ourselves a lot of damage control in the process. Part of being proactive is to familiarize yourself with all the course's required formats that you'll submit course material with. Also, the resources that will be needed to study, you'll want to know their locations, how you can access them, all the passwords or usernames required if it's at a external site. For instance, the publisher website of the course book. Sometimes they offer digital content, and you want to familiarize yourself with their software, their webpage, etc. before the course is underway. Online courses provide flexibility which in-person classes cannot ever provide. That being said, really take advantage of the flexibility that you have while taking online courses. Do your laundry while your course is in session, if it's synchronous, or prior to class, rather. You know, things that can save time. So rather than go through traffic and potentially be late in an in-person setting, you can actually get something else entirely done. I might have my dogs fed at the same time I'm in class so that they don't bark. That's been an issue for me. I have two small dogs that can occasionally be loud, so I have to take some of that into account when I take online classes. And lastly, my main tip for success in taking online courses, whether it be synchronously meeting or asynchronous, always access course material as much as you possibly can. This is the main advantage for me. I tend to learn when I look at something many times over, rather than looking at something once and coming to some form of conclusion. It's a lot easier for me to have some time to process it at my own speed, and by doing this, I tend to have a much better result in the end. So my advice is to, even though you don't meet in person every day, access course materials every day for a class that meets asynchronistically. That's kind of a mouthful. I don't know if that's even correctly said, but if the class isn't meeting, make sure that you make the time on your own to study the course material so that you don't fall behind. It's again a matter of being proactive. Thanks so much for watching. I hope to see you on campus soon. And by on campus, I mean online.